Hi, and welcome. You're listening to the X22 Report. My name is Dave, and this is episode 1803 Today's date is February 28th, 2019, and the title of the episode is Bringing Down the Central Bank is Now in Motion. Now, before we get started, I want to talk about the Patriots. Our Patriot-in-Chief, Donald Trump, is winning a few carries as he goes into his own third quarter. Now, that's worth celebrating, and that's what Noble Gold has done. They've commissioned these stunning President Trump 2020 Freedom Coins. You can get these in 0.999% fine solid silver and even 24-karat solid gold. You can display them in your home or office in this stylish presentation box along with their certificate of authenticity. Noble Gold is running a special offer. If you buy 3 coins, use the code X22 to get free shipping. Just click on the link below. Let's get into the economic collapse financial news. Now, there is a lot for Trump to deal with, and many people are out there saying, oh, let's just bring the central bank down. Oh, let's just bring these people to trial and let's put them in prison. Let's just do all this with the snap of a finger. But you need to remember something very important. The central bank, the deep state, they have been in operation for a very long time. And we've said this many times before. They are deep and wide. They have infiltrated every single part of our society. Look at the mainstream media, for instance. Look at Hollywood, for instance. And let's take a look at the central bank. Because the central bank was created in 1913. Since then, what have they created? The IMF, the BIZ, central, and I'm talking about private Western central banks in almost every single country in the world. Think about what has happened here. Now, for those who think that Trump can come in and after 2 years just snap his finger and set everything right is absolutely ridiculous. And this has to do with the economy. This has to do with arresting people. Because as you know, you need to remove many of the roadblocks. And these central bankers, these deep state people, they've been planning their agenda for a very long time. They have been in control for a very long time. And they never thought they were going to lose control, or there was going to be someone or a group of people that were going to challenge what they were doing. This is what you're seeing today. You're seeing Trump, the Patriots, challenging their plan. And it's not just bringing us to war. It's their economic plan, the control of the entire world, control of the people, control over everything. They don't like this. And they always make sure that they are on top of everything when everything falls apart. And they always make sure that they're insulated from whatever is going on, whether it be war, a depression, or anything else, because they know exactly when it's going to happen, because they're the ones who direct it. And when I say they, it's the Rothschilds, the Federal Reserve, those elites that are driving all of this. Now, we know since 2008, their plan was to stay in control. They never thought they'd be out of control. They never thought there'd be someone there challenging their plan. But you can see, if we go back in time just a little bit, you can see they were creating this housing bubble. They were creating a stock market bubble. They were creating a bond bubble. They were creating an everything bubble. And they were taking precautions. And one area where they were taking precautions is the mortgage lending area. There has been a big shift in the mortgage arena. The banks, the large banks, pushed off their lending to shadow bank lenders. And now those shadow banks will be on the hook and the large banks will not this time around. Who else is on the hook? The government, mostly the Federal Housing Administration. They are on the hook. Shadow banks, they don't take deposits, and they are not regulated by banking regulators, Federal Reserve, FDIC, OCC. Their funding is derived mostly from selling the mortgages they originate, but also from bank loans and other sources. During the mortgage crisis, a slew of them got in trouble because they did not hold deposits, were allowed to collapse unceremoniously. According to a February 2019 report by the Mortgage Banker Association, the share of mortgage originations by non-bank lenders has surged from 24% in 2008 to 54% in 2017. Now it's even higher. And at the same time, the shadow banks were taking on more mortgages. The larger banks, they were not. Actually, their share has plunged. Now that's very interesting. The largest shadow bank mortgage lender is Quicken Loans, originated at an estimated $86 billion in mortgages in 2017, according to the MBA's February 2019 report. These shadow banks are unlikely to get bailed out in a crisis, but investors will take a loss, and they're connected to the Federal Housing Administration, the government. So will the taxpayers directly bail them out? No, they'll bail them out indirectly. So we have the government that is exposed, and we have investors exposed. Large banks, they're not exposed because they've taken themselves out of the picture. So we have Ginnie Mae, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac. They're the ones who are exposed. There was a report that was released on February 25th. This is a 184-page PDF. This is by the American Enterprise Institute, and they outline how surging prices push lenders to take even greater risks. Sound familiar? It's not the large banks that are doing this. It's the shadow banking industry. And they don't have deposits. They don't have anything to back any of this up. So they're the ones who are out there in the forefront that are going to go down. And in turn, it's going to hit Ginnie Mae, Freddie Mac, or Fannie Mae, I should say. The larger banks insulated themselves from all of this because they knew exactly what was going to happen. Remember, the central banks and the banking community, they work as one. They know exactly what's going to go on when the whole thing starts to fall apart. But we do see things changing. Trump and the Patriots, they are gaining control of the system. And we see right now that Trump, his main mission is to keep the economy looking fantastic, even though the fundamentals and everything behind the scenes is doing very, very poorly. We can see that everything else behind the scenes is pretty much exactly the same or worse off than when Obama was president. But again, Trump has the ability to manipulate the statistical numbers that everyone sees. Now remember, the deep state, the central bankers, they use these statistical numbers to convince the American people that everything was great. Stock market, GDP, unemployment. We know all the statistical numbers. And all the economists and the mainstream media, they believed that the fourth quarter GDP was going to come out much lower than it actually did. Now, they were expecting it to be around 2.2%, and it came in around 2.6%. On a year-over-year basis, 2018 GDP rose 3.1%, the highest since 2005. And if we go back in time, we can see that during Obama's reign, during the same exact period, the fourth quarter, we can take a look at how he did. And when the news is out there saying, oh, this is terrible, this is not good, it only came in at 2.6%. They were expecting 3.4%. And then because of the shutdown and everything else, we were expecting 2.2%, and only it came in at 2.6%. It's really not a big deal. But if you go back to 2015, the GDP number there was 0.5. If you go back to 2014, you can see it just barely made 2%. And you have to remember, the government was shut down. There were problems here, and still Trump was able to beat the expectations. Why? Because he has the magic wand, that's why. So we know the China trade deals, they are moving forward right now, and there are many people who are understandably worried that any U.S. trade agreement between the U.S. and China might not have the most ferocious teeth behind a blinding enforcement provision. Now, Robert Lighthizer, he testified and he walked through the basic outline of what the U.S. successful agreement would look like. While increased Chinese purchases to lower the deficit are part of the goal, they are a very small part of the goal. The protection of the U.S. intellectual property, the removal of non-tariff trade barriers, the confrontation of currency manipulation, and the sector-by-sector enforcement provisions are the primary objective. The Section 301 review and the subsequent tariffs on Chinese products is the issue that pried open the Chinese fist and allowed Lighthizer, Ross, and Mnuchin to begin negotiating a trade deal. Everything is happening as a consequence to those initial 301 tariffs, and the tariff increase is only being suspended, not removed. Now remember, Trump, he is up against many, many players, and they're trying to stop what he's doing. They're facing committee membership who have been purchased by the United States Chamber of Commerce and COC President Tom Donahue. Those thoroughly corrupt Wall Street purchased globalist Democrat and Republican COC politicians only care about removing the tariffs and getting back to the multinational exploitation of trade. These same people do not want the USMCA. So Trump and Lighthizer, they're not only dealing with China right now, they're fighting U.S. politicians, and who are beneficiaries of China. They're also fighting against the U.S. COC, the multinational corporations, Wall Street, and members of both political parties who desperately want to stop any trade balance reset. This is what Trump has been up against. And you can see every single time he outplays them. You might not think that he's outplaying them, because the mainstream media and other individuals are out there saying, oh, he failed, didn't make a deal, look, he gave in to China. But you have to remember, he understands how to make a deal. He understands that if he walks away from something, he wants those individuals to come to him. It's a power play. And he knows how to make a deal. Now, we've been talking a very long time on how Trump, the Patriots, are going to make their move, and they're going to be going after the central bank. We know that Trump pointed the finger at the Federal Reserve, pointed the finger at the globalist trade deals, pointed the finger at the World Trade Organization, pointed the finger at the World Bank, and we see today the Supreme Court of the United States has rejected World Bank claims of complete legal immunity, ruling that one of its arms can be sued in relation to lending activities. Think about the institutions that have complete immunity from all lawsuits. Remember, Q has been telling us that the central bank establishment, they do believe they're above the law. And they are not. Think about the pharmaceutical industry, where they're immune to many lawsuits. Think about the tech industry. If you find bugs in software and it makes you lose money, they're immune to lawsuits, because to use their stuff, you have to sign their terms of service. And who allowed them to have immunity? Oh, it was Congress. But the Supreme Court ruled 7-1. Now that's strange. I wonder who is missing from the vote. Someone's missing. And the 7-1 ruling said that, yeah, they can be sued now. So what does this mean for the World Bank? It means that it now faces having to defend against a suit by members of a fishing community in Mundra, India, who contend that their homes and livelihoods were damaged by pollution from a coal power plant that was financed by the bank's private sector lending arm. And you know this is not going to be the only suit. You know there's going to be many, many suits brought against the World Bank. How do you bring down an institution? How do you bring it to its knees? Well, you remove the immunity for lawsuits. And then all of a sudden, the World Bank is in trouble. The central bankers are in trouble. And if this applies to the World Bank, do you think it's not going to apply to many others? Of course it's going to. And this is going to be a chain reaction. This is one of the steps that are being taken right now. There will be many more. But I want to talk about how bad the central bank is for the United States. A lot of people hear debt. A lot of people say, oh, it's not that big of a deal. Actually, Powell was out there saying, listen, the United States cannot take on any more debt. It doesn't work that way. Eventually, somebody's got to pay it back or maybe get rid of it. But the last time the U.S. completely paid off the national debt was in 1840. It was the result of decades of balanced budgets under President James Monroe, John Quincy Adams, and Andrew Jackson. In the 179 years since 1840, counting the 2018 budget, the U.S. has run a deficit 109 times and a surplus or balanced budget just 70 times, amounting to a cumulative net deficit of $14.2 trillion. All of the surpluses combined in the last 179 years amount to $580 billion, less than the deficit in 2017 alone, which was $665 billion. Since the national debt was last eliminated in 1840, the U.S. paid a cumulative $7.8 trillion of interest on the national debt. This interest includes repaying principal. Simple arithmetic reveals that 55%, the $14.2 trillion in deficit spending since 1840, has in effect gone towards servicing the national debt. Put differently, instead of paying down its debt with tax revenue, the federal government has essentially rolled over 55% of its debt since 1840 with new debt. The result is that despite running only $4.2 trillion in deficit over the last 179 years, and despite having already repaid all debt issued more than 30 years ago, the national debt today is $21.4 trillion. The difference, $7.2 trillion, represents the cumulative interest the U.S. has paid to fund its deficit minus its modest surpluses. As a result, a full 36% of today's national debt is in effect the interest paid on past debt. Only 45% of the national debt went to spending on actual programs. The rest went to servicing the national debt itself and to rolling the debt over with new debt. It also means that the government has been carrying forward the majority of the national debt going all the way back to 1840 by paying it off with new debt. A portion of the money the government borrowed in 1841 is still being paid. So if you look at this, you can see that 45% of the national debt went to spending on the actual programs. Only 45%. Think about how bad this is as the debt continually grows and grows and grows. Soon, people will not be able to support this debt. Soon, this debt will overtake everything. And if the interest rates ever inch up, this is a complete and utter disaster. And this is why the Patriots will be bringing down the central bank system. There is no choice. We don't want it reset and allow the central banks to do this all over again. This is what they really wanted to do. It has to be removed. It has to be taken down. It has to be restructured. And a sound money system needs to be put in the place of the private Western Central Bank system, where we're not borrowing the money from a private corporation. We can create the currency. We, the people, can create it without any interest attached, which means a lot of the taxes, a lot of what we know today will completely end. And there'll be checks and balances in place to make sure that every dollar is accounted for, or whatever the currency is called. And if we add gold to this, well, that will be more checks and balances, because you can't create more currency than there is gold. Now, a lot of people are going to say, whoa, this has happened before. No, that's because the central bankers came into power and they said, don't worry about it. We're going to do everything we told you we were going to do, and the gold is going to stay where it is, and we're never going to get rid of it. We're going to keep doing what we're doing. But then the central banks, as time goes on, they remove us from the gold system. That's the problem. Letting the central banks in and allowing them to take over. If we, the people, stay in control, guess what? The system will have checks and balances. Listen, everyone, thanks a lot for listening. Be well, be safe, and especially be prepared. Thanks a lot.